Five Bloods is an action-packed history lesson.
You hypnotized off of hatred. Deep down, you don't wanna see us make it. Deep down, you'd rather see us in the basement.
Ayy. So, I finally checked out Spike Lee's new joint on Netflix, The Five Bloods. It's about 4 military veterans that go back to Vietnam decades after the war. They're on a mission to recover some gold that they stashed on the battlefield, as well as the remains of their fallen squad leader, who is played by Chadwick Boseman. The black GIs in Vietnam called each other Blood because they had to constantly face racism as well as the risks of getting knocked off. So they realized all they had was each other, so they considered one another family. Black GIs swagged out their uniforms by wearing their army hats over their afros. They had black gloves, amulets, bracelets, and many of them wore sneakers instead of combat boots. They also came up with special handshakes to greet each other, and the troops and officers acknowledged each other in public with the Black Power salute, which is raising a fist. African Americans have fought for the United States in just about every war throughout history, even though at times there were racial segregation and discrimination policies in place by the government. Most black people joined the military for employment and to defend liberty, but also for the opportunity to prove that they deserved equal rights at home. The Vietnam War was the first completely integrated American war where black people and white people fought alongside each other. In 1967, 32% of the troops that fought in Vietnam were black, even though at that time they were only 11% of the US population. The high number of black troops in Vietnam caused the hate towards black people to spread throughout Asia. One of the most powerful scenes in the film was when the Bloods were in the Waterways market and the man selling chickens called out one of the Bloods for being a black GI and accused him of killing his parents. This scene shows how both the people and the soldiers are traumatized from the combat. During the Vietnam War, the United States Department of Defense created a program called Project 100,000 to recruit soldiers that were previously denied because they were below military medical or mental standards. The government did this because they needed more manpower for the war, because that's just how many people were getting killed or injured. Of the 400,000 men enlisted from this program, over 40% were African American. Because many of these men had no prior training and were very low skilled, many of them only qualified for infantry duty. Over 40% of the troops brought in from this program were assigned combat related assignments, and 37% were sent to infantry in Vietnam. The high numbers of black combat troops from Project 100,000 later caused a high number of black casualties. Many considered this a form of genocide because the US Army was literally putting inexperienced black soldiers on the front lines. At that time, many leaders in the African American community started speaking out against the war, such as Martin Luther King Jr. You also had black celebrities like Muhammad Ali publicly refusing to go to war. Black people were literally in Vietnam fighting to give rights to people that they didn't have for themselves in America. And while the black GIs were fighting overseas, the real fight was going down in America, where the civil rights movement was still heavy active. Black people at that time were basically at war. Their homes, churches, and businesses were being burned down, and they had to deal with police brutality and the killings of innocent black people by the Klan. The black community needed all the manpower possible for the fight for equality that was going down in America. Black GIs started rebelling and going AWOL. After the war, black GIs exposed that Southern white soldiers were allowed to fly the Confederate flag and would paint Confederate flags and icons on jeeps, tanks, and helicopters, while black soldiers got booked for having symbols representing the Black Power movement. At some military bases and stockades, riots went down because more than 50% of the men incarcerated within the military jails were black. Black soldiers felt their punishments were more severe than white soldiers for similar offenses. The military jails ended up mirroring the U.S. justice system, where the majority of men incarcerated are black. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. was the turning point for a lot of black soldiers in every part of the military. Laws and orders were that all soldiers were to be treated equally, but black troops rarely got promoted to authority positions within the military. By the end of the war, black people represented about 15% of the casualties. After the war, families had to deal with the pain that comes with losing family members, injuries, as well as PTSD from the combat. To make things worse, black GIs were coming back home to poverty, unemployment, and still had to deal with racism. Going to war literally only caused more issues for the black community. The Five Bloods gets 5 mics. It had a great story that was action-packed and full of historical facts. Spike Lee, you killed this. The visuals were dope, especially the shots of the waterways and the jungles in Vietnam. I also like how the movie was relevant to today. It made references to Trump's presidency, which Spike Lee is clearly not a fan of. Let me know what y'all thought about the Five Bloods in the comments below. It's free for y'all to support the channel by liking and subscribing, so make sure y'all do that. And I'm gonna get up with y'all on the next video, alright? Holla at me.
I came from uptown, way uptown. I came from uptown, way uptown. I came from uptown, way